It was a chilly, gray afternoon in lower Manhattan. The wind raced between towering skyscrapers, making pedestrians clutch their coats tighter. Street vendors hawked pretzels and hot dogs on every corner, hoping the scent of warm food would lure in anyone desperate for comfort. Among the crowd, nobody paid much attention to the older man sitting on the corner of Broad and Wall Street, except for the occasional passerby who tossed him loose change without a glance. His name was Walter Kent, a 64-year-old man who had once been a successful electrical engineer before life took an unexpected downturn. The economic crash of 2008 had wiped out his small business, and after losing his wife to cancer, he never fully recovered. Walter didn't beg. He sat quietly with a small cardboard sign that simply read, "Spare $1? God bless." Some people respected the humility. Most just passed by. That day, however, was different. Walter's old eyes caught sight of a tall, slender young man standing across the street, flanked by two suited men who were unmistakably Secret Service agents. The young man stood out not just because of his height and tailored navy peacoat, but because he was Barron Trump, the only son of the current president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. At first, Walter thought nothing of it. Over the years, he had seen plenty of politicians and celebrities strut past without so much as a glance. But Barron wasn't strutting. He was standing still, looking at Walter, as if noticing him for the first time. Their eyes met. Walter, half out of habit and half out of sheer curiosity, raised his hands slightly and asked in a soft, raspy voice, "Young man, could you spare $1?" The two Secret Service agents immediately stiffened. One of them whispered something into his cuff. The other stepped forward, but Barron casually lifted his hand, signaling them to stand down. To Walter's surprise, Barron walked directly toward him. He didn't look away. He didn't look disgusted or cautious like most privileged kids would. He just stared with a sort of puzzled curiosity. Standing just a foot away from Walter, Barron leaned forward and asked, "Why just $1?" Walter was taken aback. He'd never been asked that before. Most either ignored him or simply gave what they could. Walter chuckled awkwardly and said, "It's enough for a coffee. Enough to remind me the world's still warm sometimes." Barron stood silently, processing the answer. His bodyguard shifted uncomfortably, clearly wanting to get moving. But Barron wasn't done. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black leather wallet. Walter's heart skipped. Was he about to get $1 from the president's son? A 20, maybe? He wouldn't have dared to hope. But what happened next would be talked about on social media, in coffee shops, and eventually on national news for weeks to come. Barron took out exactly $1 and held it up. But instead of handing it over, Walter sat frozen for a moment. His mind raced with suspicion and disbelief. Was this a prank? Some entitled kid with cameras hidden behind the parked SUVs ready to humiliate him? He had seen enough viral videos of influencers mocking the less fortunate. He clenched his fingers around the sign. This could be a setup, he thought. But something in Barron's eyes didn't seem cruel or mocking. They looked sincere, almost burdened. Walter cautiously stood up, adjusting his ragged coat. "You're serious?" he asked. Barron gave a small nod. "Very." The agents immediately stepped in. "Sir, with all due respect, this is not advised," one of them whispered urgently. "We don't know who this man is." Barron shot him a glare that instantly silenced him. "He's Walter Kent," Barron replied calmly, surprising everyone. He used to own Kent Electrical in Jersey City. Graduated from Rutgers. Widower. Lives mostly on Broad Street now. Walter's mouth fell open. "How do you?" Barron shrugged. "I make it my business to know people, not just headlines." The young Trump gestured again. "The choice is yours, Walter. $1 now or something better if you trust me." Against his instincts, Walter felt an odd pull to trust him. His life hadn't exactly been a winning streak lately. What did he have to lose? "All right, kid," he said, mustering a half smile. "Lead the way." Without another word, Barron turned and began walking. Walter trailed behind, flanked by Secret Service who kept giving him sharp, evaluating looks. They weaved through narrow streets until they reached a sleek black SUV idling by the curb. Walter hesitated, staring at the luxury vehicle. "Where are we going?" Barron glanced back. "Somewhere warmer." Despite every warning bell ringing in his head, Walter got in. They drove uptown, the traffic thick but the car silent. Barron sat calmly, occasionally glancing at his phone, but mostly watching Walter as if he were studying him. Walter, in turn, tried to piece together what was happening. Why him? Why today? Was Barron trying to make some political statement? A random act of kindness? When they finally stopped, Walter's jaw dropped. Towering above them stood the unmistakable structure of Trump International Hotel and Tower, its gold letters glinting even in the dull gray light. Barron stepped out and motioned for Walter to follow. Walter's battered shoes shuffled behind Barron as they entered the grand lobby, the warmth immediately enveloping him like a heavy blanket. Walter felt out of place amid marble floors, sparkling chandeliers, and sharply dressed staff who raised eyebrows but said nothing. Barron walked straight to the reception desk. "I need the Madison suite," Barron said to the clerk, who looked startled but quickly nodded, glancing at the agents for confirmation. Walter's head was spinning. The Madison suite was legendary, a penthouse suite worth thousands of dollars a night. "Barron, I don't belong here," Walter whispered, tugging at the sleeve of his coat. Barron didn't even flinch. "You do today." Within minutes, Walter found himself standing in a suite larger than any apartment he had ever lived in. Plush furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, and a fireplace crackling softly in the corner. Walter stared out the window, overwhelmed. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Barron crossed his arms, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "Because you asked me for $1, and you were the only one today who asked for just enough, not too much." Walter turned, confused. Barron walked over, pulling something from his coat. It wasn't cash this time. It was an envelope. Walter's hands trembled as he took it and slowly opened it. Inside was a check for $100,000, signed by Barron Trump. Walter's knees almost gave out. Is this real?" Barron gave a small smile. "Real enough. But there's more if you want it." Walter could barely breathe. Barron sat down on the couch. "I'm not giving you charity, Walter. I'm giving you a shot." Walter's world tilted. And this was only the beginning. Walter sat down heavily on the leather couch, clutching the check as if it might vanish. The flames in the fireplace danced silently while the city glimmered below, but all Walter could focus on was the slip of paper in his weathered hands. "Why would you?" Walter started, but Barron raised a hand. "I know what you're thinking," Barron said calmly. "Why would the president's son give some random homeless guy $100,000, right?" Walter nodded, still too stunned to speak. Barron leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Because I've been watching. Not just you, people like you. My father's always taught me to pay attention to patterns. Most people out here are desperate, but you weren't begging. You sat out there quietly, every day, rain or shine, asking for just $1. Never guilt-tripping anyone. Never getting angry. Just hoping." Walter's throat tightened. Barron continued, "That's rare. I respect it. And I've learned something else about you, Walter. You're not just some guy who gave up. You were dealt a bad hand, but you didn't fold." Walter tried to blink away the tears forming. He hadn't cried in years. Somehow, this kid, this teenager, was reaching into parts of him he thought he had sealed shut long ago. "So, here's my proposal," Barron said, sitting up straight. "This isn't charity. It's an opportunity. I want you to help me with a project." Walter wiped his eyes. "Me? Kid, I don't even have a working phone. What could I possibly help you with?" Barron smirked. "That's the thing. You know more than you think." He pulled out a tablet and turned it around, showing Walter a simple but powerful logo, Second Chance Initiative. "It's a non-profit I'm starting," Barron explained. "Off the books, away from the press. My father doesn't even know yet. I've seen too many politicians talk about helping people like you, but nothing changes. I want to actually do something. Something real." Walter stared at the logo, still skeptical. Barron added, "I need someone who understands the streets. Someone who's been there. I don't just need boardroom advisors. I need a partner who knows what people actually go through when they lose everything." Walter was silent. "I've done my homework," Barron continued. "Your old company? You designed sustainable power systems for small businesses. You were ahead of your time. I think you still are." Walter chuckled bitterly. "That was a lifetime ago." Barron's expression didn't budge. "I think you just forgot who you were. Let me help you remember." The room grew quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire. Walter's mind was spinning. Could he trust this? Was it real? Could it be a setup? But deep down, for the first time in years, hope flickered. And it terrified him. Walter looked at Barron carefully. What exactly would I have to do? Barron grinned, youthful but determined. You'll help me build it from the ground up. Find the right people. Tell me what's broken. Help me design programs that actually work. And yeah, I'll pay you starting with this. He tapped the check. Walter's voice trembled. Why me, Barron? There's thousands like me. Barron's eyes softened. Because when you asked me for $1, you didn't ask for too much. You didn't ask for a miracle. You asked for just enough. That tells me you'll know exactly how to help people who don't want handouts, they just need a hand up. Walter felt the weight of those words settle into his chest. Barron stood up. So? Will you take the job? Walter exhaled, staring at the check. $100,000 and a chance to rebuild, not just for himself, but for countless others. He looked up at Barron and gave the first real smile he'd given anyone in years. Yeah, I'll do it. And just like that, Walter Kent's life changed forever. The next few weeks passed like a whirlwind for Walter. One day, he was shivering on a street corner hoping for $1. The next, he was seated across from tech executives, nonprofit leaders, and young interns who couldn't quite believe who he was or who he was working with. Barron kept his word. Walter wasn't just a token face for the Second Chance initiative, he was at the table, calling shots, sharing stories from the streets, designing programs to help homeless veterans, displaced workers, and families devastated by medical debt. His practical, no-nonsense ideas impressed even the most skeptical advisors. Barron was always there too, showing up to every meeting like clockwork. He wasn't playing the role of a spoiled rich kid dabbling in philanthropy. He was working, researching, listening, arguing for budgets, sometimes even staying up late in the Madison suite alongside Walter, sketching ideas on napkins and whiteboards. But nothing stays secret for long in New York, especially not when your last name is Trump. One cold January morning, Walter woke up to his phone, yes, a brand new phone Barron had insisted he take, buzzing nonstop. Headlines were everywhere. Barron Trump spotted with mysterious homeless man, what's going on? Trump air funneling money into secret nonprofit? Is the president's son going rogue? Photos of Walter and Barron stepping out of Trump Tower had surfaced. Video clips of them eating at a small diner on 7th Avenue were going viral. Twitter, Instagram, and even mainstream news channels exploded with speculation. Walter's stomach twisted into knots. This wasn't what he signed up for. He just wanted a second chance, not a front-row seat to a national media circus. Within hours, Barron's phone rang. The name flashing on the screen made Walter's heart skip. Dad, Barron said calmly. He answered and walked out of the room, but Walter could still hear the raised voice on the other end of the line echoing down the hallway. Barron wasn't shouting back, he was composed, but his body was tense. After the call, Barron returned, face unread. Barron returned to the suite, his face unreadable. He sat down across from Walter, silent for a long moment, staring into the fire as if weighing every word. Walter finally broke the tension. That was him, wasn't it? Barron nodded. Yeah. He's furious. Walter's stomach sank. Are you shutting this down? Barron's eyes flicked up sharply. No. Walter blinked. But if your father... I don't care, Barron interrupted. He doesn't understand what this means. He thinks I'm embarrassing the family, risking too much attention. He wants me to quit quietly and go back to playing golf at Mar-a-Lago. Walter leaned back, unsure whether to feel alarmed or impressed. Barron continued, this time more vulnerable. Look, Walter, I grew up with everything money could buy. You know what I didn't have? Real purpose. Something that didn't feel fake, staged, or transactional. This is the first time I feel like I'm doing something that actually matters. Walter didn't know what to say. He knew family could be complicated, but standing up to the most powerful man in America wasn't something he expected from the quiet, reserved Barron. That evening, everything escalated. Outside Trump International, reporters crowded every entrance. News vans, flashing cameras, and swarms of journalists camped out like it was a political scandal. Social media was ablaze, calling Barron everything from the rebel heir to the new hope of the homeless. Hashtags like #SecondChance and #BarronTheGoodTrump trended worldwide. The next morning, Barron made his move. He called a press conference without telling his father. He stood on the steps of the hotel with Walter by his side, dressed in a simple second-hand suit Barron had gifted him. A small podium stood between them and the dozens of cameras. The Secret Service wasn't thrilled, but Barron's quiet defiance seemed to keep them from stopping it. I know many of you are wondering what I've been doing, Barron began. Yes, I'm starting a nonprofit. Yes, this is Walter Kent, formerly homeless, now my partner. No, I'm not asking for political support, and no, I don't need my family's permission to do what's right. The crowd erupted. Walter shifted uncomfortably in the spotlight, but Barron placed a steady hand on his shoulder. We live in a nation where people like Walter fall through the cracks. People who worked hard, who had families, who lost everything not because of laziness, but because life sometimes just breaks people. And instead of judging them, we should be asking what we can do to help them stand up again. Barron's voice wavered, but he pushed through. I have been given every privilege imaginable. I know that. But if all I do with it is buy cars and host parties, then I'm wasting it. I won't be part of that anymore. The flashbulbs went wild. By the next day, Barron's speech had gone viral. Even critics of the Trump family were stunned. News anchors, late-night hosts, and even celebrities took to social media praising Barron's boldness. Memes flooded the internet, Barron silhouetted against the New York skyline with the words "second chance" beneath him. But the real surprise came days later when Donald Trump, after carefully watching the storm, called his son privately. Barron never shared the full details of that conversation with Walter, but all he said afterward was, "He won't stop me." Within months, Second Chance initiative exploded. Donations flooded in, not just from wealthy philanthropists, but from everyday Americans who resonated with the cause. Walter became its public face, appearing on talk shows, panels, and even testifying before Congress about homelessness and poverty. Walter never returned to the streets. Instead, he became Barron's right-hand man, designing housing programs, employment workshops, and mental health services. And the irony? Walter never did take that single dollar. Instead, he took the chance. And it changed not only his life but the lives of thousands who, like him, had almost given up until someone simply asked, "Do you want the dollar or something better?"